The Man Behind the Firewood, a Suburban Conspiracy. The air in Willow Creek, a tidy suburban enclave just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, smelled of fresh-cut grass and charcoal grills. It was the kind of place where mailboxes matched, lawns were edged, and the HOA sent polite but firm letters about unapproved garden gnomes. At 52, I, Tom Randall, had settled into the rhythm of this life with my wife, Ellen, in a brickfront colonial we'd called home for 15 years. Our days revolved around small battles convincing our tomatoes to grow, debating whether to splurge on organic eggs, and ignoring the neighbor's kid who kept dinging our car with his skateboard. But on a Tuesday morning in June, that rhythm broke. I was hauling a recycling bin to the curb when I caught a rustle behind our backyard firewood stack. At first, I figured it was a squirrel or maybe the stray cat Ellen kept feeding. But then I heard a sharp shoo and saw a figure crouch lower. Not a small figure, either a grown man, maybe 50, in khaki shorts, clutching binoculars and what looked like a granola bar. His face was half hidden, but I recognized the balding pate and wire-rimmed glasses instantly. Walter Grayson, president of the Willow Creek HOA. The man who'd once fined me $50 for a non-compliant mailbox height was now skulking in my yard like a budget spy. "Hey," I barked, my voice cracking into a squeak. Walter waved me off like I was interrupting a board meeting. "Get inside, Tom. This is official business." Official business? In my backyard? Before I could demand answers, a blur of fur and teeth sailed over the fence. A German shepherd, all 90 pounds of it, landed square on Walter's back, sending his binoculars flying and his granola bar into the dirt. Ellen, who'd been carrying a pitcher of lemonade to the patio, screamed, dropped the tray, and set off 3 neighbors' car alarms. The dog was Ranger, the sheriff's canine, and he wasn't playing. Walter thrashed, squealing about civil liberties as Ranger pinned him, teeth sinking into his backside. By the time Sheriff Dan Carver's cruiser rolled up, half the neighborhood was out, phones in hand. Linda from 2 doors down, wearing a neighborhood watch visor, narrated like she was on a crime show. "The HOA president is down. Dog attack. This could be espionage." Old Man Jenkins stood shirtless, inexplicably gripping a weed whacker. A could I didn't know was live streaming on his phone. Sheriff Carver, a broad-shouldered man with a slow drawl, strolled over, sunglasses on, and glanced at Walter, now face down and moaning. "Funny thing," he said, scratching Ranger's ears. "We weren't here for him. That stopped me cold. If they weren't after Walter, who were they chasing?" Carver picked up a spiral notebook that had fallen from Walter's pocket. Pages of scribbled notes, license plates, timestamps, and a diagram of our house with red X's. My name was there. Randall Residence. Unusual package deliveries. "Investigate." Ellen, still shaken, whispered, "Are we suspects?" Walter, wincing as paramedics iced his backside, groaned, "You don't understand, Tom. Something's going on. I've got proof. They're watching us." Before I could ask who they were, Ranger licked Walter's ear, prompting another yelp. Then Carver's radio crackled, found another one. Behind the miller's shed. Live feed active. A camera. Hidden in their yard, just like the one we found later that day, tucked between our firewood logs, its red light blinking like a tiny, mocking eye. That camera wasn't some prank. Dusty, wired into a camouflaged battery pack, it had been there for months, maybe years, recording every burger I'd burned on the grill, every argument with Ellen about the sprinkler settings. Sheriff Carver bagged it as evidence, muttering about professional work. Linda, still filming, declared it terrorism or worse. Walter, now in the ambulance, kept muttering about someone named Clara. When I asked who Clara was, he clammed up, saying only she knew this would happen. By evening, Ellen and I stood in our kitchen, replaying the chaos. A bitten HOA president, a hidden camera, a sheriff who wasn't after the obvious suspect. It felt like we'd stumbled into a spy novel. I couldn't sleep. At midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and crept to the firewood. That's when I saw it. A second camera, smaller, deeper in the shadows. No blinking light, just a cold, silent lens. I didn't touch it. I just stared, realizing Walter might not be as crazy as he seemed. The next morning, Deputy Mike Torres, a young guy with an eager grin and a tie his wife clearly picked, showed up with coffee. "We found 3 more cameras," he said. "Same model, encrypted feeds. And Walter's notebook? It's not just your house. Every residence and their license plates, delivery times, even how often the Millers get visitors. He handed me a printout. My name was circled with a note. Frequent late-night porch lights. Suspicious. Ellen, reading over my shoulder, said, "This is insane." Then the phone rang. It was Clara, Walter's ex-wife, who'd left Willow Creek after their divorce 2 years ago. She wanted to meet at a diner 20 minutes out of town. "Not safe here," she said, her voice tight. Ellen and I exchanged looks. This was the kind of thing you heard in movies before someone got ambushed. But we went. Clara was all business blazer, untouched iced tea, eyes scanning the diner like she expected a sniper. "Walter started this when he fired the landscaping company," she said. "No bids, no transparency. Then he hiked HOA fees, called them community contributions. People paid because he used official letterhead." I leaned forward. "How much?" She hesitated. "Before I left, over $40,000. Probably more now." She slid a thumb drive across the table. "Security footage. Walter didn't know I kept it. There's more, Tom. He wasn't just watching you. He was being watched." Back home, I plugged in the drive. The first file wasn't video, it was an invoice from the mayor's office to a company called Greenview Landscaping. $600,000 for park beautification. I'd never seen a single new flower in Willow Creek. Ellen, peering at the screen, said, "This is a racket." She wasn't wrong, and I had a sinking feeling we'd only scratched the surface. The thumb drive from Clara was a Pandora's box. I spent that night hunched over my laptop, the glow casting shadows across our living room as Ellen slept upstairs. The files were meticulously organized folders labeled by date, address, and suspicious activity. Greenview Landscaping appeared in dozens of invoices, each for work that never happened. $200,000 for tree pruning, $150,000 for native plant installation. Our neighborhood hadn't seen a new shrub in years. Every document pointed to one office. Mayor Richard Hale's assistant, Greg Patton. By 2 a.m., my eyes burned, but I kept scrolling. Photos of fake before and after landscaping projects, time-stamped PDFs, and one file that stopped me cold, a grainy night shot of someone in a hoodie near our back fence, carrying a black bag. The timestamp was 3 months ago. Ellen, woken by my muttering, came downstairs wrapped in a blanket. "Tom, you're scaring me," she said, but when I showed her the photo, she sat beside me, silent. "This is bigger than Walter," she whispered. "Way bigger." The next morning, we called in sick. My stomach churned not from flu, but from the betrayal. Our home, our quiet life, had been violated. Deputy Torres returned around 10, balancing a bag of muffins and a file. "We got a hit on that hoodie guy," he said, handing me a blurry still from another camera. "Small shoe size, likely a teenager. Not Walter." "And we found another camera behind the Miller's garage, same setup." He paused. "These cameras aren't random. They're targeting houses with HOA complaints. Like yours. And Clara's." I asked if they knew who the kid was. Torres shook his head. "Not yet. But Walter's house? It's a fortress. He built a panic room 2 years ago, soundproof, lead-lined. We cracked one of his safes yesterday. Inside were more notebooks, USB drives, and photos of residents doing mundane things. Walking dogs, taking out trash, me adjusting our mailbox. One note about me read, "Randall, move sprinkler head 2 feet west. Non-compliant. Monitor closely." Ellen snorted. "He's unhinged." Torres disagreed. "It's not random. Every note follows a pattern. Walter thought he was onto something big." He leaned forward. "We need to talk to Clara again. And you should know Walter's not the mastermind. Someone's using him." That afternoon, I drove to the sheriff's office to hand over Clara's thumb drive. Sheriff Carver met me in his office, his tired eyes scanning me like he could spot a lie from a mile away. After a long silence, he asked, "You willing to go on record, Tom?" I hadn't planned on being a whistleblower. I was an IT manager who once locked himself in his own garage. But those cameras, Walter's notebook, the invoice racket, it was too much to ignore. "I'll do it," I said. "But this isn't just Walter. The mayor's office is involved." Carver nodded and slid a photo across his desk. Mayor Hale and Walter, grinning in front of a Greenview truck, holding oversized shears like they'd just cut a ribbon on corruption. "Found this in Walter's panic room," Carver said. We've traced payments from the HOA to a shell company owned by Hale's brother-in-law. Dissolved last month, but not before funneling $800,000. Carver leaned forward. I've got a job for you, Tom. Nothing official. Pose as a landscaping contractor. See who bites. You're tired of being jerked around, aren't you? I wasn't a cop, but the weight of those files, the blinking cameras, made me nod. Back home, I checked Clara's footage again. One clip showed a figure, not the hoodie kid, moving through the storm drain behind our house at 3 a.m., carrying a heavy duffel bag. I froze the frame. The face, caught briefly in the light, was Greg Patton, Hale's assistant. That night, I grabbed a flashlight and shovel, feeling like a cliché from a bad thriller. The storm drain was rusted, covered in leaves. The smell hit me first: mildew, wet concrete, something sour. Wedged in the mud was a canvas bag, soaked and heavy. I dragged it out and opened it under the flashlight's beam. Stacks of cash, bundled tight, and a second bag of USB drives, each labeled with street names. I called Carver. He arrived in 10 minutes, stared at the haul, and said, "You found the mulch fund." "The what?" I asked. "Hale's budget for beautification," Carver said. This is what he was hiding. Walter was onto him. So someone planted those cameras to keep Walter in check. I frowned. Then why was Walter spying on us? Carver sighed. Because he didn't know who to trust. The next morning, Willow Creek felt different. The sprinklers still hummed. Linda still walked her poodle, but the air was thick with tension. Word of the storm drain find had leaked. 2 kids at the park were already calling it the sewer treasure. Carver's team confirmed the USBs held surveillance feeds from across town, parks, schools, even the library. Dozens of cameras, all routed through anonymous servers, listed as landscape infrastructure in Hale's budget. One invoice called them canopy-mounted observation hubs, spy cameras in trees. When Carver questioned city contractors, they pointed to Patton, who claimed Walter pitched the idea as a safety pilot. A month ago, that would have sounded crazy. Now it made sense. Walter's paranoia had been weaponized into a full-scale surveillance ring. Clara met us at a community center, her hands trembling as she handed over another file. "I've been collecting this since Walter ousted me from the HOA," she said. "He thought he was protecting the neighborhood, but someone hijacked his system." The file, labeled Phase 2, contained blueprints for fiber optic cables and Wi-Fi boosters disguised as part of Hale's Green Initiative. They fed into an encrypted server, one matching our backyard camera's metadata. It hit me then. This wasn't about safety. It was about data. Who mowed their lawn at 7 a.m.? Who got Amazon deliveries? Who had guests? They were building behavioral profiles for insurance companies, real estate firms, anyone with cash. Clara folded her arms. Walter was a control freak, but he'd never sell out Willow Creek. Someone else did. Carver nodded. And Walter was their pawn. That evening, Willow Creek held its annual pet parade. Mayor Hale was set to speak, but when the time came, the podium was empty. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Ranger barked at a pretzel cart. Then, on impulse, I stepped to the mic. "This isn't the usual speech," I said, my voice shaky. "But you deserve to know. The money for our parks? It's gone. Our homes are being watched. Our privacy's been sold." I held up an invoice. $500,000 for mulch. That's your beautification. The crowd froze. Then a golf cart roared through the parade path, Hale, speeding toward a maintenance shed. People screamed. Ranger broke free, launching himself like a furry torpedo. The cart skidded, Hale yelped, and Ranger tackled him into a pile of dog costumes. The crowd erupted chaos, cheers, barking. Carver arrested Hale on the spot for embezzlement and obstruction. It should have been funny, but it wasn't. Not when I knew we'd only cracked the surface. The pet parade fiasco turned Willow Creek into a circus. News vans clogged our cul-de-sac, reporters shoving microphones at anyone with a pulse. The headline, "Mayor Tackled by K9 in Poodle Parade," ran on a loop, complete with a viral clip of Ranger pinning Hale amid a sea of glittery dog tutus. By Wednesday, the HOA was suspended, and Sheriff Carver launched what he called Operation Clean Sweep, a sting to expose the rest of the embezzlement ring. That's when he roped me in deeper. "Undercover's a strong word," Carver said, handing me a coffee in his office. "You're just a guy in a polo shirt offering landscaping services. Bait, not James Bond." I laughed, but my stomach nodded. Me, Tom Randall, a 52-year-old IT guy who once tripped over his own hose, playing spy? Still, those cameras, that cash in the storm drain. Hale's smug facade lit a fire. What's the play? I asked. Carver grinned. Pose as a Greenview contractor. Offer special mulch deliveries. See who bites. I borrowed a friend's pickup, slapped a fake Greenview logo on the door, and started cold calling addresses from Carver's list homes tied to sketchy HOA payments. Most hung up. One guy lectured me for 20 minutes about soil pH. But at a McMansion just outside town, I hit pay dirt. The guy who answered looked like he'd stepped off a yacht crisp shirt. No socks. Hair gelled to perfection. Mulch, huh? He said, smirking. The kind you don't plant. I nodded. He gave me an address at tool shed behind a failed community garden and told me to drop the goods by Friday. Carver was ecstatic. He wired me with a microphone hidden in a tape measure, which felt like overkill until I realized how easy it was to forget I was bugged. By Friday, I was sweating through my polo, half convinced the mic would short-circuit. The shed was a rusted husk, surrounded by wilted tomato cages. Two men waited, yacht guy and a second man, all sunglasses and toothpick, like he'd auditioned for a mob flick. I handed over a box fake cash and shredded paper, courtesy of Carver's team. They didn't blink, just took it and slipped inside. Seconds later, deputies swarmed. Zip ties, no chase, just paperwork. Anticlimactic, but effective. The men were subcontractors for a tech firm, Nexus Analytics, which had been laundering the surveillance data. They sang like canaries, spilling names, accounts, and memos detailing how Willow Creek's behavioral data when we walked our dogs, what we bought, who visited was sold to insurers, marketers, even a real estate group gauging neighborhood desirability. The news broke that weekend. Mulch money scandal rocks suburbia, dominated local TV. Ranger got his own Twitter account. Someone memed Hale's takedown with your HOA fees at work. I couldn't buy milk without someone whispering, "That's the mulch guy." Ellen, half proud, half mortified, started calling me Agent Sprinkler. I pretended to hate it, but it stuck. Walter, meanwhile, leaned into his accidental hero status. Freed from jail, no charges stuck, he wrote a blog, The Truth Beneath Your Turf, ranting about conspiracies with surprising clarity. Neighbors treated him like a martyr, the guy who started the fire but called the fire department. The HOA was dissolved by town vote, replaced by a neighborhood council. Clara, elected president, gave a tearful speech, thanking Ranger and vowing transparency. It felt like closure. It wasn't. One morning, while checking my gutters, I spotted a glint under the garage eaves. A camera sleek, silent, painted to match the siding. No blinking light, no wires. I pried it off with a ladder and a crowbar. Carver ran it through his system. The feed wasn't local. It streamed to an overseas IP, encrypted, untraceable. "This isn't Greenview's tech," he said. "Someone's still watching." My gut sank. We'd toppled Hale, exposed Nexus, but the real players were out there, untouchable. Days later, Carver handed me an envelope at the station. Inside was a drone photo of our street, time-stamped yesterday. There I was, sipping coffee on my porch. Similar shots had been taken town-wide parks, schools, the senior center. Someone was mapping our lives, not just watching. That night, I heard footsteps outside. Not raccoons deliberate, human steps. On the porch was a manila envelope, no address. Inside were surveillance stills of Walter, at the store, in his yard, even inside his living room. The last photo chilled me. Walter in a chair, in a dark room, staring at a camera. Timestamp, 2 hours ago. I called Carver. Deputies searched Walter's house. Empty. No forced entry. A neighbor saw a black van pull up. Walter got in, calm, like he'd been expecting it. Stranger still, they found a hidden room under his garage, not the panic room, but older, dustier. Boxes of notes, screenshots, and a file labeled Phase 3. Blueprints for camera networks spanning states, even countries. Notes on behavioral prediction software, cross-referenced with medical and financial records. This wasn't surveillance. It was control. Carver's face was grim. Walter stumbled into something global. They used his obsession as a test run. A week later, feds rolled in black suits. No small talk. They took everything. Files, drives, my notes. "We'll handle it," they said. We were cut off. Walter vanished. The news called it relocation, hinting at witness protection. But I wasn't so sure. He knew too much, or maybe he played a bigger role than we thought. Willow Creek tried to move on. We planted flowers, held a barbecue. Ranger, retired, napped on porches. But the paranoia lingered. People eyed streetlights, whispered about mailboxes. One evening, I found a package on my doorstep, a hard drive, no note. Against every instinct, I plugged it in. It wasn't footage. It was a program, a map of Willow Creek, my house at the center, with moving dots labeled by initials. Mine read, T. Randall, early riser. 2 coffees. Leaves car unlocked 7:05 to 7:15 a.m. I slammed the laptop shut. Someone had built a system, and it worked. Ellen and I sat up that night, blinds drawn. What do we do? She asked. I didn't know, but I knew we couldn't stay quiet. The feds might have taken over, but this was our home. I called Carver, who was already digging. There's a Nexus exec who didn't flip, he said. Live's an hour away. Want to take a drive? I hesitated. I wasn't a hero. But those dots, that map, they were a violation. Let's go, I said. We drove to a gated estate, Carver's cruiser blending with the dusk. The exec, Paul Vance, was Nexus's CFO, a man who dodged the sting. Carver had a hunch. Vance was the link to the overseas feed. We parked down the road, watching. At 9 p.m., a black van same make as the one at Walter spooled into Vance's drive. 2 men in suits got out, carrying a briefcase. Carver radioed for backup. Stay here, he said. I didn't. We crept closer, hiding behind a row of azaleas. Through a window, I saw Vance hand over a laptop. One suit plugged in a drive, nodded, and left. Carver whispered, That's our link. Backup arrived silent, efficient. They raided the house. Vance didn't resist, just smirked as they cuffed him. The laptop held encryption keys to the overseas server. By dawn, Carver's team traced the feed to a shell company in Singapore, tied to a data broker selling behavioral profiles worldwide. The raid on Paul Vance's estate felt like a victory, but it didn't erase the unease that had settled over Willow Creek. The laptop Carver's team seized was a gold mini encryption keys, server logs, and emails linking Nexus Analytics to a Singapore-based data broker called Prism Insights. They weren't just selling our dog-walking schedules or Amazon delivery times. They were packaging entire behavioral profiles, our health records, credit scores, even voting patterns for insurers, advertisers, and shadier clients I didn't want to think about. By Monday, the story had gone national. Suburban Spy Ring exposed, blared on CNN, with Willow Creek's pet parade clip playing on repeat. Ranger became a meme, and I got a nickname I couldn't shake, Mulch Man. Ellen wasn't thrilled with the attention. You're on Reddit, Tom, she groaned, showing me a thread titled Mulch Man vs. the Mayor, Suburban Showdown. I tried to laugh it off, but the hard drive I'd found, the one with the real-time map of our lives, kept me up at night. Whoever built that system was still out there, and Vance's arrest, while big, felt like another layer peeled back, not the core. Sheriff Carver agreed. Prism's a front, he said over coffee at the station. The feds are chasing the money, but someone's pulling strings higher up. And Walter's still gone. Walter Grayson's disappearance gnawed at me. Was he a victim, a mastermind, or both? His blog, The Truth Beneath Your Turf, had gone silent, but not before he'd posted a cryptic final entry. The lawn is green, but the roots are rotten. Trust no one. Clara, now running the neighborhood council, was convinced he'd been silenced. He was paranoid, but he wasn't wrong, she told me at a council meeting. Someone used his obsession to test their system here. Willow Creek was their lab. The feds weren't talking, but Carver had a lead, a Nexus contractor, Lisa Morrow, who'd gone off-grid after the sting. She'd handled Prism's server setup and was rumored to be hiding in Raleigh. She's our shot at the root, Carver said. Feel like another road trip? I hesitated. Ellen was already worried I was in too deep, and I wasn't exactly trained for this. But those cameras, that map, the idea that someone was still watching our every movie, it pushed me past reason. I'm in, I said. We tracked Morrow to a rundown motel off I-40, the kind with flickering neon signs and questionable stains. Carver's badge got us her room number. At 10 p.m., we knocked. No answer, but the curtain twitched. Carver kicked the door, and subtlety wasn't his thing tonight. Morrow, a wiry woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a laptop clutched to her chest, froze. I didn't do anything, she stammered. Carver raised a hand. We're not here to arrest you, Lisa. We need answers. About Prism. About Walter. Morrow's story spilled out like a dam breaking. She'd been hired by Nexus to build Prism's servers, thinking it was routine corporate analytics. Then she saw the data, medical records, kids' school schedules, even browser histories. It wasn't just marketing, she said, voice shaking. They were predicting behavior, manipulating it. Insurance companies paid to deny claims based on risk profiles. Real estate firms tanked property values to scoop up land. I wanted out, but they threatened me. She nodded at her laptop. Everything's there. Names, clients, even the guy running it. Who? I asked. She hesitated, then typed a name into her laptop. Victor Langston. A tech mogul with a clean public face, philanthropist, TED Talk regular, but a shadow empire built on data. He's untouchable, Morrow said. Owns half the servers in Asia. Prism's just one of his toys. She handed us a USB drive. Take it. But don't expect to win. Langston's got people everywhere. Back in Willow Creek, Carver's team decrypted Morrow's drive. It was a roadmap to Langston's operation, client lists, payment trails, even a memo outlining Phase 3, the global rollout Walter's notes had hinted at. Our neighborhood was the pilot, chosen for its predictability, its trust in rules. Langston's team had used Walter's HOA fines and cameras to test how much surveillance people would tolerate before pushing back. The answer? Too much. Ellen was livid when I told her. You're not going after a billionaire, Tom. You're not Batman. But she saw the USB drive, the memo with our address circled, and softened. Just don't get yourself killed. I promised I wouldn't, but I wasn't sure I believed it. Carver had other plans. We can't touch Langston directly, he said. But we can burn his operation down. Publicly. He'd been working with a reporter, Sarah Klein, from the Charlotte Observer, feeding her leaks from the sting. With Morrow's drive, they had enough for a bombshell. Sarah met us at a diner, her notepad already half full. This is bigger than Willow Creek, she said, scanning the files. Langston's tied to lobbying groups, even government contracts. If we publish, it's war. I thought of the cameras, the map, Walter's empty house. Then let's start one, I said. Sarah's story dropped 3 days later. Tech tycoon's secret surveillance empire exposed. It named Langston, Prism, and every major client. The internet exploded. Hashtags like Mulchgate and Spy Suburb trended. Protesters picketed Langston's offices. Rangers' Twitter hit 50,000 followers. Langston issued a denial, all polished PR, but the damage was done. Clients dropped Prism overnight. The feds, under pressure, reopened the case, raiding Prism's Singapore hub. Carver's team found 2 more cameras in Willow Creek, both disabled, their feeds cut. It felt like we were winning. Then I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice, calm, clipped. Mr. Randall, you've made a mess. Walk away, or your wife's medical records hit the dark web. I froze. Ellen's diabetes, her prescription sit was all on that map. I hung up, hands shaking, and told Carver. Langston's rattled, he said. That's good. Means we're close. Close, but not there. We needed Langston himself, not just his minions. Morrow's files mentioned a meeting in D.C. Langston with Prism's top clients, set for next week. Carver pulled strings with a Fed contact, Agent Torres, no relation to Deputy Mike, who got us in as consultants. Ellen begged me to stay home. You've done enough, she said, tears in her eyes. But I couldn't stop. Not when Langston was still free, still watching. D.C. was a blur of suits and security checks. The meeting was at a swanky hotel, all glass and chandeliers. Carver and I posed as tech vendors, badges faked by Torres. Langston was there, charming a room of execs, his smile never wavering. But I saw the tension in his jaw when Sarah's article was mentioned. During a break, Carver slipped a tracker onto Langston's car, a risky move, but we needed his next stop. That night, the tracker led us to a warehouse outside Arlington. No guards, just a single light inside. Carver radioed Torres. This is it, he said. Langston's endgame. We crept in, the air thick with dust and oil. Langston stood at a table, flanked by 2 men, reviewing server racks humming with data. Willow Creek was a mistake, he was saying. Too nosy. We pivot to Europe, cleaner networks. I recorded it on my phone, heart pounding. Carver signaled Torres, and feds swarmed the warehouse. Langston didn't flinch, even in cuffs. "Your ants," he said, staring at me. "You'll never stop the system." But his servers were seized, his clients exposed, his empire crumbling. Back home, Willow Creek felt lighter. The council planted a community garden, real plants, no cameras. Clara organized a Take Back Our Privacy rally, with Ranger as the mascot. Ellen and I started sleeping with the blinds open again. But I couldn't shake Langston's words. Ants. Was he right? Had we only dented something unstoppable? Then Clara called. "Tom, you need to see this." She'd found a box in her garage, left by Walter before he vanished. Inside was a letter. "Tom, Clara, I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting us, but I built their cage. Phase 3 is bigger than me. If I'm gone, keep fighting. The roots are deep." With it was a drive, more names, more servers, a map stretching across continents. Walter hadn't been a pawn. He'd been a whistleblower, playing a long game. Walter's letter changed everything. For weeks, I'd pictured him as a paranoid control freak, maybe a victim, maybe a villain. But that Drivia digital confession tucked in a dusty box painted him as something else. A man who'd seen the beast and tried to slay it, even if his methods were unhinged. The files listed servers in London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo, all tied to Victor Langston's Prism insights. They weren't just collecting data. They were shaping lives, nudging insurance rates, rigging real estate deals, even swaying local elections with targeted ads based on our habits. Willow Creek had been their test kitchen, and Walter, without knowing it, had handed them the recipe. I took the drive to Sheriff Carver, who was nursing a coffee and a stack of paperwork at the station. His eyes lit up when I explained. "This is the missing piece," he said, plugging the drive into a secure laptop. The files were amazing: encrypted contracts, client lists, and a chilling memo titled Behavioral Orchestration. It outlined how Prism used our data to predict and manipulate decisions, from what we bought to how we voted. One line stuck with me. "Suburban compliance is 92% when surveillance is perceived as safety." We'd been lab rats, and we'd played along. Carver called Agent Torres, the Fed who'd helped us in D.C. "Langston's in custody," Torres said over speakerphone, "but he's lawyered up. Won't talk. These files could crack him. The feds wanted me to testify, to go public with Walter's evidence." Ellen was against it. "You've done enough, Tom," she said, her voice cracking as we sat at our kitchen table. "What if Langston's people come after us?" That phone call, my medical records, she trailed off, and I saw fear in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. But Walter's words keep fighting burned in my mind. "If we stop now," I said, "they win. Not just here. Everywhere." The hearing was set for Charlotte, a federal courthouse packed with reporters in suits. I wasn't the only witness. Clara testified about Walter's HOA scams, tying them to Prism's early funding. Lisa Morrow, the Nexus contractor, detailed the server setup, her voice steady despite the death threats she'd received. Sarah Klein, the reporter, submitted her articles, now a book deal in the works. Even Deputy Mike Torres took the stand, recounting the storm drain find. But the spotlight was on me, Mulch Man, the suburban nobody who'd stumbled into a global conspiracy. Standing before the judge, I held up Walter's drive. "This isn't just about cameras in my backyard," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "It's about a system that treats people like data points, not humans." Walter Grayson saw it. He tried to stop it, and he's gone. If we don't act, this spreads. The courtroom was silent, but I felt Langston's stare from the defendant's table, cold and unyielding. His lawyers spun him as a visionary, not a criminal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge ordered Prism's servers shut down, its assets frozen, and Langston held without bail pending trial. The fallout was swift. Prism's clients, insurance giants, tech firms, even a political consultancy, faced lawsuits and sanctions. Langston's empire unraveled as whistleblowers came forward, emboldened by Sarah's reporting. In Willow Creek, we tore down every camera we could find, replacing them with birdhouses and fairy lights. The neighborhood council, led by Clara, passed a privacy-first charter banning surveillance without consent. Ranger, now a local legend, got a statue in the Parka bronze German Shepherd mid-leap, inscribed with truth bites. But the real closure came a month later. Carver called me to the station, a grin on his face. "We found him," he said. "Walter. Not dead, not in hiding, but in a small town in Oregon, living under a new name. The feds had placed him in witness protection after he'd turned over early PRISM files, long before our firewood fiasco. He'd been feeding them intel, playing double agent while his blog ranted about lawn conspiracies. He wants to talk," Carver said, handing me a burner phone. Walter's voice was softer than I remembered, tired but clear. "Tom, I'm sorry I dragged you into this. I thought I could control it, keep the neighborhood safe. But I built their trap." He paused. "You finished what I couldn't. Thank you." I asked if he'd come back. "Not yet," he said. "Too many eyes. But tell her I was wrong." I promised I would. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift, not just for me, but for Willow Creek. Life settled into a new normal. Ellen and I rebuilt our garden, this time with sunflowers, not tomatoes. We hosted barbecues, laughed about Mulch Man, and checked our eaves weekly, just in case. The town held a festival, Freedom from the Feed, with music, food trucks, and Ranger leading a parade of rescue dogs. Clara gave a speech, quoting Walter's letter. "The roots are deep, but we're deeper." The crowd cheered, and for the first time in months, I believed we'd won. Langston's trial was a media circus, but the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on 47 counts, from wire fraud to racketeering. He got 25 years, his smirk finally gone. PRISM was dismantled, its servers wiped, its data leaks patched by a task force Ellen jokingly called Nerds Against Spying. The global network Walter's files exposed led to arrests in 3 countries, though some players, Carver admitted, slipped through. Ants, Langston had called us. Maybe. But ants can topple giants when they work together. One evening, I climbed onto our roof, something I hadn't done since the cameras. The sunset painted Willow Creek gold, lawns neat, kids biking, neighbors waving. It looked like the suburb we'd moved to 15 years ago, but stronger, wiser. No blinking lights, no buzzing drones. Just us, reclaiming our lives. I thought of Walter, out there in Oregon, maybe sipping coffee, maybe free. I hoped so. Back inside, Ellen handed me a beer. "You're not climbing roofs at 52 for fun," she said, smirking. "Checking for cameras?" I laughed. "Habit." She kissed my cheek. "Good. Keep it." We sat on the porch, watching fireflies, and I realized the fight wasn't just about tearing down a system. It was about building something better, a community that trusted itself, not surveillance. We'd done that, and it felt like enough. This story is over, but the questions it raises aren't. Have you ever felt watched, your privacy chipped away by systems you didn't see? How do you balance safety and freedom in your community? And what about justice? When is it enough? And when does it demand more? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on the role of vigilance and standing up to injustice. Tell us where you stand, what you've seen in your own life, and how far you'd go to protect what's yours. Your voice matters. Let's keep this conversation alive.